Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time you are joining us. We're glad you're here. I'm the Reverend Sheryl Butler, and this is Journey Road Ministries, where we seek to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. So today I'd like to share some ponderings with you. At first, I'll read the gospel reading for the day from Matthew chapter 10, verses 40 through 42. So whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of righteous. And whoever gives a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly, I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. May God bless the reading and the hearing of the word. Amen. So, Jesus is talking about being welcoming. Welcoming is about caring for others, especially caring for the children. So most churches, we like to claim we're welcoming. But as many people on the edges of society know, there seems to be an asterisk after the welcome. It's like all are welcome except gay people or people of a certain color or drug addicts or people with certain disabilities or mental differences. I attended a church once. I was actually visiting this church. And I'd been there several times, and I really liked the pastor, but this day he was chastising the congregation for not bringing new people to church. And he emphasized how everyone is welcome in their church. And then he said, even gays and lesbians. And I perked up, I thought, well, that's wonderful. Then he added the asterisk. Of course, they can't be members. So everyone is welcome. Asterisk. Do you have asterisks attached to your faith? As Christians, we need to practice our faith outside of the church. How do we treat the stranger, the foreigner, the immigrant? How do we respond to racism in our world? And I know all us white folks just getting tired of hearing about this racism and Black Lives Matter. I think sometimes we're like covering our ears and going, la, 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 la. It's an uncomfortable reality. It's difficult to be confronted with this. And it's really hard for many of us to understand our part in the problem. And why it seems to be falling on white people to fix. Well, I mean, the reality is the problem was created by us white folks. And so really we're the ones that need to fix it. And I know a lot of Christians think, well, we shouldn't, they don't want to hear a preacher speak about social justice, which, I mean, if you read the whole Bible is really about justice. So if you have issues there, then just try reading the Bible again. And I hear all lives matter, or I'm not going to apologize for being white. I never owned slaves. So I think it's time for us white folks to educate ourselves to the systemic and structural racism that permeates our society. How are we going to welcoming people when we continue to add this asterisk at the end, or turn a blind eye to what is happening? The police officer's knee on George Floyd's neck is really very symbolic of this systemic problem, that our policies are like constantly having a knee on the neck of people of color. You know, as Martin Luther King Jr. once said, it's all right to tell a man to lift himself by his own bootstraps, but it's cruel just to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. So I'm going to be talking of some of these things, helping us to look at some of our concepts and perhaps misunderstandings or lack of understanding. And I think one of the first things we need to address is this concept of race. You know, I know we're getting tired of hearing about race, and that race isn't the problem. And it's, in a way, that's true. I mean, race is actually a human construct. It doesn't really exist other than there's one race, and that's the human race. And now that we have the DNA and understand DNA, it's really proven it. I mean, there's more variation in fruit fly DNA than there is in human DNA. So really, we may look different on the outside, but on the inside, we're all pretty much the same. So where did this concept of race come from? Well, we can trace it back to something created in the early 17th century, and it was actually used to justify and legally enforce the theft of land and labor from Black and indigenous people in the European colonies of the Western Hemisphere. So it's really our country is really built on this concept. And so in the 400 years that have followed, our political, economic, judicial, education, healthcare, and cultural systems in the United States have continued to evolve and grow from these colonial roots. And some of the most of the really terrible methods of oppression used against people of color have since ended. Many of the most deeply ingrained, insidious, and invisible aspects of these systems remain. As a result, race, much like paper money or even our system of law, is a social construct with very real consequences for human lives. And I know there's been a lot of criticism about some of the protests, but mass protests can certainly create short-term results. It could also fuel longer-term movements. And of course, the non-violent direct action as a strategic means really became prominent during the civil rights movement of the 1960s, which were built on the philosophy of Gandhi. And a key part of this strategy is civil disobedience, the choice to non-violently break laws as a means to disrupt complacency. So, in other words, as the Black Lives Matter movement put it, civil disobedience is a deliberate transgression against business as usual, otherwise known as systemic injustice. And we've seen the Black church as a leader in the civil rights movement and investing in community care for generations. And then our predominantly white churches have tried to invest in the work of anti-racism and learning together and how to take actions. And, you know, there's a lot of educational material with books and films and podcasts, which are certainly essential, but it doesn't teach us everything and explicitly lead to improved outcomes for people of color. However, on the other hand, taking the imperfect and humble actions allows us to embody Jesus' justice, welcome, and love, which we learn through relationships and take steps towards repairing harm that has already been done. As Christians, we are called to love. Christian love is not sitting in a church pew feeling spiritual and righteous. Christian love is a verb. Christian love is caring for the sick. Christian love is feeding the hungry. Christian love is welcoming the immigrant. Christian love is visiting the prisoner. Christian love is working for justice. Christian love is protesting social injustices. Christian love is acknowledging our privilege and working for equity and changing policies. Christian love is opposing structural systems that harm people of color. Christian love is sacrificial love. And as Independence Day approaches in the United States, it is worth remembering that the 4th of July commemorates an act of high treason. And in some places even entails a reenactment of the Boston Tea Party. That's when protesters destroyed property worth over $1.5 million in 2020. While I don't advocate for the destruction of property, it is part of our American history in fighting injustice. So there are many resources available today to help us white folks understand the history and systemic nature of racism, and we do have several listed on our website. So if you find yourself feeling annoyed by Black Lives Matter protests, then please access the resources and keep an open mind. So may God bless you and keep you safe, but may God also cause you discomfort over the continued injustice and oppression of our brothers and sisters of color. And may God teach us how to be truly welcome to all without an asterisk.